The vast alien arena was filled with a strange, almost deafening buzz, a sound that came from the crowd of thousands of alien species that had gathered from all corners of the galaxy. The air was thick with excitement, and the energy in the arena was electrifying. Above them, huge, holographic screens projected images of warriors who would be battling for glory in the ultimate test of strength and skill. This was no ordinary tournament. The stakes were high, and the spectators could feel it. At the center of the arena stood a man, a human warrior. His name was Jack, and he was far from what anyone would expect in a place like this. His body was scarred from countless battles. His skin, though still strong, bore the marks of his struggles. A deep cut ran across his cheek. His left arm was covered in burn scars from an explosion years ago, and his torso showed the signs of a life lived on the edge. He had seen things, done things, things no one would want to imagine. Yet here he was, standing tall, despite the fact that every alien around him looked far more powerful, more dangerous. As Jack looked around, he could see the contempt in the eyes of his opponents. Some of them were so big, so imposing, that their mere presence seemed to command attention. There were towering aliens with scales like dragons, massive creatures with too many limbs to count, and beings whose eyes glowed with unnatural light. They were all sizing him up, and none of them believed for a second that a human like him could stand a chance. "Is that all?" One of the larger aliens sneered, his voice booming in the arena. The crowd erupted into laughter, their voices echoing off the walls. "A human. This will be over in seconds." The mocking voices reached Jack's ears, but he remained unfazed. He had heard it all before. Humans were always underestimated, always seen as weak and fragile, but Jack knew better. He knew the strength that lay inside a human's heart, the fire that burned even when the body was pushed to its limits. His scars weren't a sign of weakness. They were a sign of survival, of strength. They told the story of a man who had fought through the impossible and kept going, no matter what. The announcer's voice boomed, calling for the first challenge. The crowd quieted for a moment, eager for the spectacle to begin. Jack's opponent stepped forward. It was a creature called a Gors, a being from a planet where strength ruled above all else. Its skin was like stone, its muscles rippling with power. It towered over Jack, and its eyes glowed with the intensity of someone who had killed for fun. This was the creature that would be his first test. "Fight well, human," the Gors growled, its voice a low rumble. It was a warning. It wasn't expecting Jack to put up any kind of real fight. The bell rang and the battle began. Jack stood his ground, but he wasn't foolish. He knew he wasn't going to outmuscle the Gors. No, his strength wasn't in his size. It was in his ability to adapt, to think on his feet, to use the tools at his disposal. As the Gors charged at him, Jack sidestepped just in time, barely avoiding a crushing blow. The alien's fist hit the ground with such force that it cracked the floor beneath them. The crowd gasped. Jack didn't hesitate. He moved fast, his body agile as he ducked and dodged, waiting for an opening. He had to stay on his feet. His opponent was stronger, but that didn't mean it was unbeatable. With every move, Jack's mind was working quickly. He analyzed his opponent's strengths and weaknesses, calculating each strike. The Gors' blows were heavy but slow. Jack had learned to avoid such attacks in his years of battle. He moved like a shadow, his feet barely touching the ground as he avoided the alien's deadly fists. It was clear that the Gors was frustrated. It roared and swung wildly, trying to catch Jack, but Jack was always one step ahead. The crowd, who had initially mocked him, began to fall silent, their eyes locked on the unexpected fight unfolding before them. Finally, Jack saw the opportunity. The Gors raised its massive arm for a finishing blow, but in its overconfidence, it left itself open. Jack moved in, faster than anyone could have predicted. He lunged, ducking under the Gors' arm, and with a swift, well-placed strike, he hit the alien's pressure point. The Gors staggered back, its eyes wide in shock. The crowd gasped. Jack didn't stop there. As the Gors tried to regain its balance, Jack darted behind it, using his agility to avoid the alien's wild flailing. With a well-placed kick, he sent the Gors crashing to the ground. There was a moment of complete silence in the arena. The crowd couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The human had actually defeated the mighty Gors. The announcer's voice came over the loudspeakers, but it sounded distant, almost unreal. "Victory goes to the human." The arena erupted into a chorus of cheers and confusion. The sound was deafening. Some were amazed, others were still in disbelief. But one thing was certain, Jack had done what no one thought was possible. As Jack stood there, breathing heavily from the fight, he caught the eye of one of the spectators, an alien who had once laughed at him, who had called him weak. The alien's expression was no longer one of amusement. It was one of respect. Jack didn't let the moment go to his head. He knew this was just the beginning. There were more battles to come, more opponents who thought they were invincible, but Jack wasn't concerned with their strength. He was concerned with proving one thing, that humans were more than just their scars. The crowd's laughter had faded, replaced with something more profound. It was a feeling of uncertainty. They had never seen anything like this before. The human warrior had just walked into the arena, scarred and battered, and now he had become the symbol of something much larger. He wasn't here to prove that humans were stronger than aliens. He was here to prove that humanity's strength lay in something far deeper, something that no alien could understand until they faced it. Jack knew that he had earned their respect, but the true test was still ahead. This was only the first trial. Many more were to come, and Jack would face them all, one by one. But he wasn't worried. He had already proven something more important than any fight, that no matter how many scars a person bore, it was the strength of their spirit that truly defined them. As Jack walked off the arena floor, he could hear the whispers in the crowd. The same voices that had mocked him were now filled with awe. They didn't understand it yet, but they would. And when they did, they would realize the truth. Humanity, despite everything, was a force to be reckoned with. The arena had fallen silent as the human warrior, Jack, walked off the floor. His heart was still racing from the fight, but he didn't let it show. His body ached from the bruises and exhaustion, but he knew this was only the beginning. He had proved himself in the first battle, but the road ahead would be much harder. There would be more trials, more opponents who would try to take him down, and this time, the eyes of the galaxy were on him. As he made his way to the locker rooms, the weight of the victory started to settle in. The cheers from the crowd still echoed in his ears, but it wasn't the victory that concerned him. It was what would come next. He was no longer just another fighter. He was a symbol of defiance, a symbol of humanity's strength. And with that symbol came the pressure to succeed. Jack sat on the bench in the locker room, peeling off his gloves and looking at his hands. His skin was worn, scarred from countless battles, but it was still strong. He had fought in wars, in skirmishes, and in the dark corners of the galaxy. He had faced enemies that would have crushed most people, but he had survived. And now, in this alien arena, he had proven that humanity was not as weak as everyone believed. But as much as he tried to focus on the victory, his mind kept drifting to the next battle. There were still so many unknowns, so many challenges ahead. The first victory had come with ease, well, as much ease as a fight with a towering alien could offer. But the next one wouldn't be so simple. He knew that. The first fight had been about proving a point, but now the real battle began. The door to the locker room opened, and in walked one of the tournament's officials, a tall, humanoid alien with translucent skin that shimmered in the dim light. Its eyes were like mirrors, reflecting every movement in the room. It walked toward Jack with a deliberate calmness. "You've done well, human," the official said, its voice smooth but not unkind. "You have impressed the council. They are intrigued by you." Jack looked up at the alien, his expression unreadable. "Intrigued, that's one way to put it." The alien smiled slightly. "I would suggest you prepare. The next battle will be more challenging. The creature you face is not like the Gors. He is not easily defeated." Jack narrowed his eyes. He knew that whatever came next would be dangerous. The Gors had been a brute, powerful but slow. This next opponent would be different, smarter, and far more deadly. "Who am I fighting?" Jack asked, his voice steady. The alien hesitated for a moment before answering. "You will face a mind-controlled sergeant from the Hrelin Empire. His strength is unmatched, and his mind, though controlled, is still a formidable weapon." Jack's mind raced as he processed the information. A mind-controlled soldier. That was different. He had fought many physical battles, but mental warfare was something else entirely. He knew this fight wouldn't be won with speed or strength. It would take strategy, cunning, and the ability to read his opponent, something he had honed in every battle he had fought. The alien leaned closer, its eyes reflecting a strange, almost calculating gleam. "The Hrelin are not a race to be underestimated. Their soldiers are ruthless, and this one is no exception, but we want to see how far you can go. We are watching, human." Jack didn't respond. He didn't need to. He wasn't here for approval. He wasn't here for the spectacle. He was here to show them what humanity could do. The alien left him alone in the room, and Jack stood up, stretching his sore muscles. The challenge ahead was daunting, but he was ready. He had no choice but to be ready. The next battle was only hours away. The whole arena was buzzing with excitement, the spectators eager to see how the human warrior would fare against his new, terrifying opponent. Jack didn't care about the crowd. He didn't care about the spectacle. All that mattered was the fight. When the time finally came, Jack walked back into the arena, his face set in determination. The lights above blazed down, casting sharp shadows on the floor. Across from him stood the Hrelin soldier. He was tall, even taller than the Gors, and his skin was a deep shade of purple, with veins running like intricate patterns beneath it. His eyes were empty, cold, as though he wasn't really there. His muscles were massive, rippling with raw power, but his gaze was vacant, as if someone had taken away his soul and replaced it with nothing but obedience. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, introducing the two combatants. The Hrelin sergeant was a machine of destruction, a warrior whose mind had been taken over by a distant ruler. But Jack wasn't intimidated. He had faced powerful enemies before, and he would face this one the same way, on his terms. The bell rang, and the Hrelin charged forward with terrifying speed. Jack barely had time to react before the massive soldier was upon him, swinging his fists with devastating force. Jack ducked under one of the blows, but the wind from the punch still sent him stumbling back. He quickly regained his balance and moved to the side as the Hrellin's other fist came crashing down. The Hrelin didn't stop. He was relentless, attacking with a ferocity that could shatter planets, but Jack wasn't trying to overpower him. He wasn't trying to outmuscle the sergeant. He was trying to outsmart him. The Hrellin's mind was controlled, but the body was still his own. Jack could see the pattern in his movements. The way the Hrellin's massive fists always followed the same arc, the way his body shifted just slightly before each blow. It was a pattern, and patterns could be broken. Jack darted to the side, avoiding another punch, and slid under the Hrellin's massive arm. He moved quickly, like a shadow, his body honed by years of battle. He grabbed the Hrellin's arm and twisted it, using the sergeant's own momentum to send him stumbling forward. It wasn't enough to take the Hrelin down, but it was enough to buy Jack some time. The Hrelin turned, its vacant eyes locking onto Jack's. He didn't hesitate. With lightning speed, he lunged forward and struck, aiming for the sergeant's weak point, the neck. The Hrelin flinched but quickly retaliated, swinging his fists in a desperate, wild attempt to land a hit. Jack was faster. He dodged again, circling around the Hrelin like a wolf chasing its prey. Each time the Hrelin swung, Jack was there, just out of reach. He needed to tire him out. He needed to wear him down. And slowly he could see the Hrelin starting to lose his rhythm. His swings were slower now, his movements less coordinated. Finally, Jack saw his opening. The Hrelin swung a massive fist, and Jack ducked, using the Hrellin's momentary imbalance to strike. With one final blow to the back of the Hrellin's neck, the warrior fell, crashing to the ground with a loud thud. The arena went silent for a moment, the crowd uncertain of what had just happened. Then the announcer's voice broke the silence. "Victory goes to the human," the crowd erupted in shock and awe. Once again, Jack had done what no one thought possible. He had faced an opponent who seemed unbeatable, and he had won. But this victory was different. This wasn't just about strength. This was about tactics, about using his mind to outthink his opponent, to find the weakness where none seemed to exist. As Jack stood there, catching his breath, he knew the battles ahead would only get harder. But he also knew that humanity had something that no alien species could ever take away: the will to fight, to survive, to never give up, no matter the odds. And with that thought, Jack walked. The hum of the arena buzzed in Jack's ears as he walked back to the locker room. His body ached from the battle with the Hrelin soldier, but his mind was sharp, focused. The crowd's roar echoed in his thoughts, but he didn't let the excitement cloud his judgment. He had won again. But winning was starting to feel like less of a victory and more like an obligation. As he entered the locker room, the door slammed shut behind him, sealing off the noise from the outside world. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow and sat down heavily on the bench. His body was covered in bruises and cuts, but it was the exhaustion that weighed him down more than anything else. It wasn't physical fatigue, it was the mental toll. The pressure of every victory, the pressure to prove himself, to prove that humanity could stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. It was beginning to take its toll. The door opened again, and the alien official from before entered. This time it wasn't just a quiet conversation. There was something different in the air, something tense. The official's translucent skin seemed to shimmer with the weight of what was about to be said. "You've done well, human," the alien said, its voice serious. "But there is a challenge ahead that will test you in ways you cannot imagine." Jack didn't flinch. He was used to challenges. He was used to enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. He had faced impossible odds before, and he had come out on top. He could handle whatever was coming next. The official continued, its eyes reflecting an unreadable expression. "Your next opponent is not like the others. He is different. We've never seen anyone like him before. He was once a part of our council, a great warrior. But he's gone rogue, and now he fights for himself." Jack narrowed his eyes. "What's his name?" The official hesitated, and for the first time there was a flicker of something like uncertainty in its eyes. "He is called Zephron. He was once one of the greatest warriors of our species, but something changed. He became too powerful, too dangerous. He was exiled from the council after a disagreement." Jack stood up, his interest piqued. "Why is he here?" The official looked away. "He has become a legend among the gladiators. He fights for his own reasons now, and his reasons are not to be taken lightly. He has never been defeated, and those who face him are rarely seen again." Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the challenge that would define everything. It wasn't just another fight, it was a fight for survival. The arena would be his proving ground once more. The official looked at him for a moment before continuing. "Zephron is powerful, but there's something else about him. He's unpredictable. We have never understood what drives him, but we know one thing: he is relentless." The words hung in the air like a warning, but Jack didn't back down. He wasn't afraid. He had faced countless enemies, and he would face this one too. The arena would be where it all happened, where humanity would either rise or fall. Jack didn't waste any time preparing. The next battle was already set, and he knew it would be the hardest yet. He went over his strategy in his mind, going over every possibility, every weakness in his opponent that he could exploit. He couldn't afford to make mistakes. This fight was going to be different. As the time for the battle drew nearer, the excitement in the arena reached a fever pitch. The crowd was eager to see what would happen next. They had seen Jack defeat aliens larger and stronger than him, but this time it was different. Zephron was no ordinary opponent. He was a warrior with a reputation that preceded him, and no one was sure what to expect. When the gates opened, Jack stepped into the arena, his muscles tense, his senses on high alert. He wasn't worried about the crowd. He wasn't worried about the noise. All that mattered was the fight ahead. The arena was massive, the floor a mixture of sand and stone, the walls towering above like a prison that would trap him if he didn't succeed. The arena lights were harsh, blinding, but Jack focused on the task at hand. Across from him, standing tall and imposing, was Zephron. His body was covered in dark, intricate tattoos that seemed to pulse with energy. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity, and his movements were smooth, like a predator preparing to strike. He was an alien, but his presence was unmistakable. He wasn't just any warrior, he was something else entirely. He was a force of nature. Zephron's voice rang out, cold and confident. "You are brave, human, but bravery alone will not save you." Jack stood his ground, refusing to let Zephron's words rattle him. "We'll see about that." The announcer's voice rang through the arena, and the bell sounded to signal the start of the fight. Zephron moved first, faster than Jack had anticipated. The alien's movements were fluid, almost unnatural. He was a whirlwind of motion, his limbs moving with a speed that seemed impossible for his size. Jack barely had time to react before Zephron's fist slammed into the ground, creating a shockwave that sent Jack stumbling back. But Jack didn't panic. He was used to this. He had faced stronger, faster opponents before. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding another strike. Zephron was relentless, his attacks coming in quick succession, each one more powerful than the last. Jack dodged, blocked, and countered, trying to find an opening, but it was like trying to fight a storm. Zephron didn't give him a moment's rest. The alien was everywhere, his fists, his feet, his body moving with an intensity that Jack had never seen before. Jack was forced on the defensive, his mind racing as he tried to stay one step ahead. This was unlike any fight he had ever been in. Zephron wasn't just powerful, he was unpredictable. One moment he was charging, the next he was gone, striking from an entirely different angle. Jack's mind was working overtime, analyzing every movement, trying to find some kind of rhythm in the chaos. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. He had to outthink Zephron, just like he had outthought every opponent before him. But this time it wasn't about finding a pattern in his movements. Zephron was too fast, too unpredictable. Jack had to think differently. In the midst of the battle, Jack noticed something. Zephron's attacks were powerful, but they followed a rhythm. They weren't random, they were calculated. There was a moment after each attack when Zephron's body would shift when he would prepare for the next strike. That was Jack's opening. With a surge of adrenaline, Jack moved. He dodged to the side, barely avoiding another crushing blow from Zephron, and in that split second, Jack struck. He moved with precision, aiming for the weak point in Zephron's chest, just under the ribcage. His fist connected, and Zephron staggered back, his eyes wide in surprise. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Zephron was stunned, but Jack knew he couldn't waste the opportunity. He pressed the attack, landing another strike to Zephron's side, forcing the alien warrior to stumble again. The crowd roared, their voices a mixture of shock and excitement. Jack had done it. He had found the opening, but Zephron wasn't done. With a roar of fury, he surged forward, swinging his massive fists with reckless abandon. Jack couldn't keep up. The next blow landed, sending him crashing to the ground, pain shooting through his body. His vision blurred, and for a moment he thought it was over. But then something inside him snapped. This wasn't the end. Not yet. He couldn't let it end like this. With every ounce of strength he had left, Jack pushed himself up, ignoring the pain, ignoring the exhaustion. He wasn't going to lose, not to Zephron, not to anyone. Jack's mind cleared as he stood tall again, his eyes locked on Zephron. This fight was far from over, and he wasn't going down without a fight. Zephron roared again, charging toward him, but Jack was ready. He had one last move, one last chance to prove that humanity was more than just a race of weaklings. He gathered his strength, focused all his energy into one final strike. And this time, when Zephron came at him, Jack didn't dodge. He didn't step back. He stepped forward, meeting Zephron's attack with his own. The two warriors collided, their strength shaking the ground beneath them. For a moment, everything was chaos. Then Jack's fist landed with a sickening crack. Zephron faltered, his body going limp as the blow landed directly on his chest. The alien collapsed to the ground with a thud, and the arena went silent. The crowd stared in stunned disbelief. Jack had done it. Against all odds, he had defeated Zephron, the legend of the gladiatorial arenas. The once unbeatable warrior was now lying motionless at his feet. The announcer's voice rang through the silence, shaking the air with its incredulity. Victory goes to the human. Jack stood over Zephron, breathing heavily, his body aching from the battle. But inside, he knew he had done something no one expected. He had defied the odds again. As the crowd erupted in applause, Jack allowed himself a brief moment of victory. He had won. And with that win, he had proven that humanity, no matter how small or scarred, could stand up to any challenge, no matter how great. And he wasn't done yet. The arena was filled with a new kind of energy. The sound of the crowd was almost deafening, their voices a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. Jack stood in the center of it all, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. The fight with Zephron had been the hardest battle of his life, but he had won. He had defeated the once unbeatable warrior, and with it, he had proven to everyone, most importantly to himself, that humans were not to be underestimated. But even as the cheers rang in his ears, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. He had won, yes, but there was still more to prove. The arena was full of powerful beings, each more dangerous than the last. Every victory had brought more attention, more expectations. But Jack knew the real challenge was yet to come. The next fight would be his greatest test, the one that would truly define him as a warrior. As Jack walked off the arena floor, he was met by the alien official from before. This time, the alien's face was more serious than Jack had ever seen. It didn't speak immediately, but its eyes were filled with something like concern. Jack didn't need to hear the words to know that the next fight would be the hardest yet. "You've earned your place here, human," the official said finally, its voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "But the next challenge, it is unlike any other." Jack raised an eyebrow, the adrenaline from the battle still coursing through his veins. He had heard that before. Every fight was supposed to be harder than the last. But something in the alien's voice made him pause. This wasn't just another fight, it was something else. "Who am I facing?" Jack asked, his voice steady but his mind already racing. The official hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You will face someone who was once part of the council, someone who was once one of us." Jack's brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" The official's eyes flashed with something like regret. "The next opponent is not just a fighter. He is a former champion, someone who has walked in the highest circles of power. He was once a leader among our people, a warrior beyond compare. But he has fallen from grace." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about strength anymore. This wasn't just another gladiator. This man had once been part of the very people who controlled this arena. He had been at the top. "What happened to him?" Jack asked, his voice quiet but intense. The official sighed. "He betrayed us. He betrayed everything we stood for. And now he fights for himself, not for honor, not for the council, but for something darker. He has become a force of chaos, and we cannot control him anymore. He is a monster." Jack's mind raced as he processed the information. He had already fought powerful enemies, stronger, faster beings, but this was different. This wasn't just a battle of strength. This was about confronting someone who had once been a part of the very system that had brought him here. "Who is he?" Jack pressed, not willing to back down. The official's voice was barely a whisper now. "He is called Draction, and he will not be easy to defeat." Jack nodded slowly. The name sounded ominous, and the alien's tone only confirmed what Jack already knew. This wasn't just another fight. This would be the test. The fight that would determine whether or not he truly belonged in this arena. The fight that would either break him or make him a legend. The time before the next fight passed in a blur. Jack didn't speak much in the locker room. There was nothing to say. The weight of the challenge ahead was heavy on his mind, but there was no time for doubt. He had faced his fears in every fight, and this one would be no different. He would face Draction head-on, just like he had faced every other opponent. The crowd's cheers reached a fever pitch as the time for the battle arrived. The arena was filled with anticipation, the air electric with excitement. This wasn't just another fight. This was the fight, the one that would change everything. Jack walked into the arena, his body ready but his mind alert. He wasn't sure what to expect from Draction, but he knew this. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes. The lights above were blinding, casting harsh shadows across the arena floor. The spectators' faces were a blur of colors, but Jack couldn't focus on them. His focus was entirely on the man who stood across from him. Draction was a giant of a creature, taller and more imposing than any of the enemies Jack had faced before. His body was covered in dark armor that seemed to shift and change as he moved. His eyes were cold, devoid of any emotion, and his presence was like a storm gathering on the horizon. He moved slowly, but every step seemed to shake the ground beneath them. Jack didn't move. He didn't flinch. He stood tall, his muscles coiled like springs, ready for whatever came next. Draction's voice was like thunder, shaking the very air around them. "You are brave, human, but bravery will not save you." Jack met his gaze, unflinching. "We'll see about that." The announcer's voice rang out, and the bell sounded, signaling the start of the fight. Draction moved first, as expected. His speed was deceptive for his size, and his first blow came so fast that Jack barely had time to react. The punch missed, but the shockwave from it sent Jack stumbling back. He quickly regained his footing, his eyes locked on Draction's every move. The creature was relentless. Every strike was calculated, every movement filled with the weight of his power. Jack dodged and weaved, his body moving with the practiced precision he had honed in countless battles. But Draction's attacks were different from anything Jack had faced before. There was a savage, almost unpredictable quality to his fighting style. Jack couldn't afford to underestimate him. Jack knew he had to find an opening. He couldn't rely on his strength alone. Draction was too powerful for that. No, this battle would be one with strategy, with careful precision. Jack needed to stay calm, to wait for the right moment. He couldn't rush, but Draction didn't give him time to think. The giant alien pressed forward, his attacks coming faster, harder. Jack ducked under a swing and rolled to the side, but Draction was already there, his massive hand grabbing Jack by the throat and lifting him off the ground. For a moment, Jack's world went black. The pressure on his throat was suffocating, and the pain was overwhelming. But he didn't panic. He couldn't. This was the moment that would define him. With a strength born of desperation, Jack grabbed Draxion's wrist and twisted, using his agility to slip free of the grip. He landed on his feet with a roll, breathing heavily but determined. Draxion was furious. He roared, his eyes blazing with fury as he charged again, his massive fists coming down with the force of a meteor strike. Jack had no choice but to keep moving, to keep dodging. One wrong move and it would all be over. Jack's mind raced as he analyzed Draxion's attacks. There was no pattern, no predictable rhythm. The giant was a force of nature, wild and untamed, but Jack wasn't about to let that stop him. He had fought enemies who were faster, stronger, and more unpredictable. He could do this. In the midst of the chaos, Jack spotted a weakness. Draxion's armor, though nearly impenetrable, had a small gap at the joints. That was his opening. Jack just had to get close enough to strike. With a surge of energy, Jack moved. He dodged Draxion's fist and slipped through the gap in the alien's defenses. His fist connected with Draxion's side, hitting the weak point in his armor. The alien staggered back, his eyes flashing with pain and surprise. For the first time, Jack saw a crack in Draxion's invincibility, but Draxion wasn't finished yet. He turned on Jack with a snarl, his fury reaching new heights. Jack had only one chance left. He had to end it now. In a blur of motion, Jack lunged forward, landing a series of quick, precise strikes. Each hit found its mark, chipping away at Draxion's defenses, breaking him down bit by bit. With one final, powerful blow, Jack drove his fist into the gap in Draxion's armor directly into the alien's chest. Draxion staggered, his eyes wide with shock. For a moment he seemed to falter, and then he collapsed to the ground, his body crumpling in defeat. The arena fell silent, the crowd in shock. Jack stood over the fallen giant, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. The announcer's voice rang out, breaking the silence. "Victory goes to the human." The crowd erupted into applause, but Jack barely heard it. His mind was still racing, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done it. He had faced the monster, the legend, and he had won. And with that victory, Jack knew one thing for sure: humanity would not be underestimated any longer. As he walked off the arena floor, the weight of the battle still heavy on his shoulders, Jack couldn't help but think about the next fight. The road ahead would be long, and there were still more challenges to face. But Jack wasn't worried. He had already proven what he was capable of, and the galaxy would never forget the name of the human warrior who had defied all odds. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a journey, and Jack was just getting started.